the end of class, I have a couple of things I need to talk about, but today's section will be pretty short. All right, so today we're going to cover section 3.2. Does everybody have graph paper? I think I got everybody, yeah. All right, so today's section is called linear functions. This section is pretty short. A lot of it is review from section 3.1. Or a lot of it, has the same content. All right, so first we're just going to talk about what is a linear function. Linear functions are one of the more basic types of functions. We know we talked about last week how functions are special relations that have this special condition that every element of the domain matches with exactly one element of the range. So linear functions have the form f of x equals ax plus b, where a and b are real numbers. So a and b are just numbers, x is our variable. And also just a reminder, we know that f of x is just a fancy name for y. So this is really just another, an alternative way of writing our slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b, same thing. So it's just a more fancy way of writing y equals mx plus b. So graphically, when you graph these linear functions, they will look one of a few ways. They could be a line that looks like this. This would be a line with a positive slope. So if it rises from left to right, it has a positive slope. You always read graphs just like how you read sentences left to right. So you always start on the left and go to the right. So here it's rising. So you would say that's a positive slope. If they were slanted down, of course this would be a negative slope. So here it's falling from left to right. And then the last one would be just a horizontal line, like this. So that's one of our special lines, if y'all remember from, it was the last unit. So this is a horizontal line. And horizontal lines have a zero slope. So remember I told you how to remember that, is horizontal has a z in it, so the slope is 0. So that'll be the three ways that you can see, or that linear functions may appear. The slant of the line is also based on the slope. The closer the slope is to 0, so maybe it's like a real small number, like say 1/4, it'll get closer and closer to being flat. So closer and closer to horizontal. And the larger the slope is, say like 1,000, it'll start getting almost vertical. All right, so let's look at an example. The rest of the class is just going to be examples. All right, so we're going to start off with a graphing question. I forgot to put a coordinate plane on here, so go ahead and write the function down, and then I'll go get me a coordinate plane so I can graph this. So this function is written as f of x equals -8 minus 8/9x. So there's lots of ways that you can graph linear functions, but on the homework, the way that the graphing system works on Hawks is that they want you to plot 2 points. So that's how I'll show you in class today. Let me go get a coordinate plane off of Google. Okay. All right, so here's how I'm going to plot this or graph this function. First thing you may want to do is just rearrange this so it's in that f of x equals ax plus b form. If you can graph it without doing that, that's fine. I'm just going to flip these around, so I'm going to write it as negative 8/9 x minus 8. Just being careful to make sure I get the signs correct. Make sure I don't change any signs when I flip that around. All right, so we know from slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, that this number here, negative 8/9, that's the slope. So that's the slope. And then the other number, negative 8, is the y-intercept. So slope-intercept form makes it easy for you to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So here's what we're going to do. Step 1 is going to be plot the y-intercept. So plot your y-intercept. It's negative 8. Again, this is the y-intercept, so it's crossing the y-axis. So we're going to count down from the origin to negative 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's negative 8. So that would be the first thing you do on Hawks. Now step 2 is going to be use the slope in rise over run form to plot the next point. All right, so we're going to use the slope and rise over run form to plot the next point. So our slope here, just going to write this down here, rise over run. So our slope is negative 8/9. So this would tell us to go down 8 and to the right 9, but we can't go down 8 because we would be off the graph. So we're just going to flip it around, put the negative on the bottom. So put the negative on the bottom. This is going to tell us to go up 8. Okay, so up 8 and then left 9. So up 8 and left 9. All right, so start at your y-intercept. The mistake sometimes people will make here is they want to start at the origin. But to plot your next point, you got to start at the y-intercept. All right, then we're going to go up 8, left 9. Up 8 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Left 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now this was just a coincidence here, but it ended up we plotted the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So that was just ended up being a coincidence. That doesn't always happen. Last thing we need to do is just connect these with a line. Try to hit both of them. And you're done. On Hawks, the line will automatically pop up. All right, so sometimes if you have a negative slope, you may have to switch around the negative to make it to where your point will be on the graph. So just keep that in mind. All right, now to keep in mind also, you know, on the test, this would be like a multiple choice type question. All right, let's look at the next one. This one is a multiple choice question on the homework. I'm going to turn the lights down so you can see it better. Just want to give you an idea of what you can expect to see on the homework. It says choose the correct graph for the following linear function. They named this graph or this function P. So it's P of X instead of F of X. Again, that's just the name of the function. It doesn't change anything. So p of x equals -8. So do you notice anything special about this function? Say it again? Yes, it's going to be horizontal because this is one of our special lines. You can tell that because there's no variable over here. We know that f of x, or p of x in this case, is just a fancy name for y. So that's y equals -8. So we know this is a horizontal line. So automatically we've eliminated these choices here. So is it, we'll say this is like A, B, C, and D. So is it B or C? C, good, because this is -8. So it's a horizontal line through -8. I like this for the test because this is something that you have to use your knowledge from the last unit and combine it with stuff from this unit. So this is a good one for the test. And it's pretty easy. All right, the next one is a little bit harder. It's not terribly difficult. If you want to draw this graph on your paper, here's the easiest way to do it. Plot these 2 points. Here, this is 0, 8. And then here's another one, 1, 2. Plot those 2 points and draw a line through it. There's lots of ways you could do this problem. I'm not sure how the homework would tell you to do it if you went to the tutor option. But I'm going to show you how I think it's easiest. It says find a formula for the linear function depicted in the following graph. So of course your graph on your homework will have different points that you'll have to identify, but that's a good first step, is to look and see if you can identify 2 points on the graph where it crosses through perfectly through a certain point. Like for example, I wouldn't want to pick this point right here because I can't tell where that's crossing at. It's somewhere between 1 and 2, but I can't tell. So pick one where it perfectly crosses through a point. All right, so when I look at this, the first thing that I notice is that they're telling me the y-intercept. Right, so this is the y-intercept. So this is my linear function. Then I'm already given the y-intercept. I know that b is +8. So the y value that it crosses through is 8. So I already know that b is equal to 8. So that's good. If you are given the y-intercept like this, it's going to be super easy to find the slope. There's 2 ways you can find the slope. You could use the slope formula over here. Label these points like x1, y1, x2, y2, and then just plug it into the slope formula. But an easier way to do it would just be to count over, do like a rise over run. So we'll do slope equals rise over run. Start at your y-intercept and see how far you have to go to get to your next point. All right, so starting at your y-intercept, we go down, so we know it's going to be negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So down 6. And how far to the right? Just 1. And that's going to be positive. If you go in the right direction, it's positive. Left direction is negative. So what does this slope simplify to? It's -6, right? So now we know the slope, we know the y-intercept. plug it all in. You have f of x equals negative 6x plus 8. Now, you can make this way more complicated. This is the easiest way that I think there is to do it. The more complicated way to do this would be to use these 2 points to find the slope, and then use point-slope form. Since you now know the slope, you would plug in one of the points for x1 and y1, and then use point-slope form to find the equation. But this is the easy way. But this all sort of hinges on the fact that you know the y-intercept. All right, so that's an important quality of this particular graph. We have 2 more, then we'll be done. Starting off with another easy one. Again, this one you could make it super complicated, but I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. The directions on this one and the next one are going to say the same thing. Find the linear function with the following properties. And notice that they're also telling you the name of the function is f. So we know that our linear function is going to be named f. So they tell us a point. I know that doesn't look like a point. That's actually what this is. This is a point. I'll show you how we can convert it into an ordered pair. So they tell you the point and the slope. So y'all told me at the beginning of class that f of x is just a fancy name for y. So let's write that up here. F of x equals y. Now you can see how the x value and the y value are going to match up. So x matches with 0, y matches with 1. So there's your ordered pair. So the ordered pair is 0, 1. And this is a special point. Anytime the x value is 0, that's the y-intercept. So if x value is 0, then that point is the y-intercept. So they're telling you the y-intercept here. They're telling you the y-intercept is 1. So not only is not only is it a point, it is a special point because it's the y-intercept. So we know the slope, we know the y-intercept is 1, so that's the y value. So we can use slope-intercept form to find the function. We're going to call this f of x equals mx plus b instead of y equals mx plus b, just because we're supposed to write it as a function. So plug in your slope. M always represents the slope. So f of x equals 6x plus 1. Super easy. Now again, you could make this more difficult, and the homework when you go to the tutor part, they may show you the harder way to do this, which is to use point-slope form. So if you didn't automatically notice that this was the y-intercept, you could use point-slope form. So you would come over here, you would label your point x1, y1. So you had 0, 1 was x1, y1. You would just plug in, 6 for the slope, 0 for x1, 1 for y1, and then you have to simplify. So it's not, it's not a lot of work, but it's easier if you can just identify that that's the y-intercept. All right, the last one is the hardest one. And it's really not even that difficult. It's just the hardest one in this section. Same directions. Find the linear function with the following properties. And notice this time they don't tell you any slope. They just tell you 2 points. Neither one of which is the y-intercept. So you don't know the y-intercept, which is okay. Just makes it a little bit more work for us. But they tell you that f of -6 is equal to -12, and then f of -2 is equal to 7. Remember how we read that? F of whatever's in the parentheses. So f of -6 equals -12. All right, so using that definition of f of x equals y, let's convert these into ordered pairs. So what would be this ordered pair? Good, -6, -12. And then the next one? Good, -2, 7. Perfect. From here, we have 2 steps. Step one is find slope. Step 2 is use point slope form to find the function. So step 1 is to find the slope. You want to be careful here because if your slope is wrong, the whole problem is going to be, or your whole answer is going to be wrong. So find the slope carefully, and then use point slope form to find the function. All right, so go ahead and write down your slope formula. I've written it down on the board up here. You can see you're going to need to label your points. Let me turn up the lights again, it's a little bit dark over there. So you can see that y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So m go ahead and label your points. I'm going to call the top one x1, y1, and the bottom one x2, y2. Doesn't matter how you label these, you can call the top one x2, y2, and the bottom one x1, y1. You get the same answer. All right, so let's plug them in. Be really careful here. It's super easy to mess up with the signs. So y2 minus y1, 7 minus -12. And then x2 minus x1, -2 minus -6. If you want to plug this in your calculator all at one time, just make sure you put parentheses around the top and bottom. All right, so that's going to be, the double negatives are going to turn into positives, right? So that's 19 over 4. All right, so the slope is 19 over 4. Now let's go over here and use point slope form. Oops, not y2. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. You can use either point for x1, y1, does not matter. You'll get the same answer. Just going to go ahead and use the one I've labeled x1, y1 up here. I know that m is 19 over 4. That's going to be y minus -12 equals 19 over 4 times x minus -6. Go ahead and change those double negatives to positives. I like to go ahead and multiply through on the right-hand side and then move the 12 over. I forgot my calculator today, so you might have to help me out. So that's going to be y plus 12 equals 19 over 4x plus 57 over 2. Let me extend the page. Right, then we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. You're going to combine that with its like term. So you're only subtracting it from the 57 over 2. Get y equals 19 over 4x plus 32 over 33 over 2. All right, last thing you got to do is just, they said to write this as a function. So just replace y with f of x. So let me extend it again. So just replace that y with f of x because they asked you to write it as a linear function. So you want to use function notation. And you're done. So this is the hardest one, in my opinion, on the homework. So if you can do this one, then you will be totally fine for this section. Let me go ahead and end this recording. Then I have a couple things I want to talk to you about.